So today we're going to take a look at adverbial clauses and how we actually diagram them and identify them and ultimately punctuate them. So we're talking about punctuating subordinate adverbial clauses, and we're going to be using Guy Fieri here from the Food Network to help us out. So let's consider these three sentences. So Guy continued to squirt the hot sauce, even though it burned, down his throat. And there he is. The dentist is worried because Guy uses hot sauce as mouthwash. And when Guy gets thirsty, he drinks hot sauce. And this guy is nuts. Anyway, I want you to notice that there's a sort of interrupter in the middle of sentence one, even though it burned. And then I want you to notice that at the end of sentence two, there's this clause which says, because Guy uses hot sauce as mouthwash. And in sentence three, there's sort of this opening part which says, when Guy gets thirsty. All three of these are going to be examples of what we call an adverb or an adverbial clause. And so what we're going to look at is how we identify them, how we diagram them, and how we punctuate them. Because I want you to notice then that in the first one, there are 2 commas. In the second one, there are no commas. In the third one, there's 1 comma. And so we're going to learn some basic rules that you're going to be able to take with you when you actually write with adverb clauses from here to the rest of your life. So let's talk about sort of what makes an adverbial clause. So an adverbial clause is sometimes referred to as a subordinate clause. A subordinate basically means that it's weaker. So what we have is we have a main clause, and then we have sort of like this weaker clause, which we call the subordinate clause. It's a dependent clause, just like a noun clause is a dependent clause, which means we have an independent clause, the main sentence, and then we're going to have like this weaker part of the sentence, which is a whole other little mini clause. In this case, it's going to be modifying the verb. Think about how a noun clause or a nominal clause served as a noun. So now these adverbial clauses are going to serve as adverbs, and they're going to modify verbs. And they're going to answer an adverbial question. Questions like how, when, where, why, to what extent, and how frequently. I just recognize the fact that I don't have a comma between the word when and where, so I need to fix that. Sorry about that. And lastly, they're going to begin with a subordinating conjunction. All right. And so a long time ago, back in Unit 1, we introduced conjunctions, and we wrote down the list of conjunctions. And there was a third type. We talked about coordinating and correlative. And the third type, which was subordinating, I said, don't worry about it. We're not going to need those for a long time. Well, it's been a long time, and now we're going to need them. But these are all going to be clues that we're going to be working with an adverb clause. It's going to have a clause, so it's a subject and verb. It's going to have a subordinating conjunction, which starts it, and it's going to be answering one of the adverb questions, and it's going to be modifying the verb. So when we say that it modifies the verb, let me show you an example. If I said Guy gets overly excited whenever he talks about Flavortown, we're going to, there he is, we're going to talk about how whenever he talks about Flavortown is actually a clause, because it's actually modifying the verb. So this answers the question of when, whenever he talks about Flavortown. And then it's going to be modifying the verb gets excited. It's kind of a passive voice verb. When does he get excited? Whenever he talks about Flavortown. So that's a clue that we're dealing with an adverbial clause. Like adverbs, adverbial clauses can oftentimes move. We know that adverbs have a sense of mobility, and so does an adverbial clause, usually. Not always, but usually you can pick them up and move them. So in this case, if this one's at the end of the sentence, I can pick it up and move it at the beginning. And if I can move it, it's probably a pretty good clue that I'm dealing with an adverb clause. Watch me move it. I could say, whenever he talks about Flavortown, Guy gets overly excited. So I can move this one around, and so it's another clue that I'm dealing with an adverb clause. Yes, and he likes to move his sunglasses as well. All right. They also begin with subordinating conjunctions. So this is this huge list of subordinating conjunctions. It's not important for you to memorize this list or to put it even on your yellow notes, because you're going to get used to the same ones we use over and over and over again. Now, this is the most common ones, and there are certainly others, but I think you're going to find that we use the same ones over and over again. We use a lot of becauses, we a lot of use of words of like even though, and a lot of the though words we'll use a lot. You'll find we keep repeating the same ones, but these are the words that are going to start the adverb clause. So this is the trigger word. As we're reading a sentence, we're going to be listening for this particular type of word. So we're going to pause our video, and then we'll come back and continue on with how they are differently placed within the sentence.